my name is Jeanette, and I want to thank you for joining me on the channel Jane Reads. So today we are going to talk about new to me authors that I read in 2024. Yes, we are going back in time, but we're also going to talk about new authors that are a possibility for me to read in the month of April. So I have my yearly Christian fiction reading challenge, and April's prompt is a new to you author. This is the same prompt as last April, so I made sure that I read some new to me authors last April. So over the course of 2024, I read 23 new authors. I should have added one more to make it 24 and 24, but I didn't. So I read 23 new to me authors. Out of those 23, 2 of them were just general fiction, so secular, but fiction. 2 of them were from classic authors I'd never read before. 2 of them were biographies. 5 of them were nonfiction. And 12 were in the Christian fiction genre. Okay, out of those 12 that were in the Christian fiction, which are the ones that will fit for my Christian fiction reading challenge, there are 7 that I would recommend to you, or that I plan on reading more books by them. Well, if I plan on reading, I'm going to recommend the book I read by them. So I'm just going to start with the way they're written down here. They were written down in the order throughout the year that I read them, except for one, because somehow I missed her. Oops. So now she's at the end because I don't have the right order. So the first author is Jennifer Delamere. So the first book I read was The Captain's Daughter. This is historical fiction set in London, England, featuring 3 sisters. The series features 3 sisters. So book 1 is one of the sisters, and then book 2 and book 3. So book 1 is The Captain's Daughter. Book 2 is The Heart's Appeal. And book 3 is The Artful Match. And as I said, they're all historical. 1881 starts in 1879, goes to 1881. So they do continue from each other. Pick up, like one ends, this one starts, this one ends, this one starts. I love that because they were continuation. But each book features a different female character, and then it is romance. So romance happens. Personally, my favorite, yes, I think my favorite was The Heart's Appeal. I also really enjoyed The Artful Match, but I think book 2 is my favorite. But this is an author that I read all 3 last year, and I have added another 3-book series to my shelf to read maybe this year. We'll see what happens. Then the second author is Julianna Deering. So this is the Drew Farthering Mysteries series. It is also set in England, but this time it is 1930s England. It's more of a cozy mystery series. Book number 1 is Rules of Murder, and then I also read book number 2, Death by the Book. This is a 6-book series, so I still have 4 more books to go in this series. And again, they are consecutive, picking up after each other, almost immediately after the other one. We are mainly following Drew. Obviously, that's kind of the series name. But we're also following his love interest and his best friend. I want to say Nick, but I'm not sure if that's his name. But yeah, I really enjoy these characters, and it reminds me a lot of like an Agatha Christie mystery, like Miss Marple type mystery, but with younger characters. So maybe a Tommy and Tuppence. I think that's what they're called. Yeah. But yes, I do plan on continuing reading this series, and I have enjoyed her writing. Then Lynn Austin. Yes, I'd never read her before. So the book I read is If I Were You. It is, again, historical, set in England. It starts off in England in 1940. So this is a dual timeline, 1940 and 1950. It does end up in the States at the end of the book, but we are just following two best friends. Yes, two best friends. And their journey through wartime England and kind of what leads them to. I really want to read more by Lynn Austen because I really, really enjoyed this book. And I'm a little ashamed that I haven't picked up any more by her because I do have some on my shelves. Especially, like, I want to finish this duology and I haven't read book 2 yet. Okay, the next author I do not own because I borrowed this book from the library, and that is Carrie Stuart Parks. So the book I read was Fragments of Fear. This one is set in New Mexico with an archaeology dig, sort of, I want to say. I did really enjoy the characters in this book, and I definitely want to read more by Carrie Stuart Parks because she just kept me invested on what was going on. And the suspense was like right there. Like I had to keep reading to know. And again, I have a bunch more on her shelf. Like on my shelf, like why have I not picked up any more of them? So I really need to do that because I think I own 4 more. 3 for sure that I can see. Yeah. Okay, then Liz Tolsma. But so though I read The Gold Digger, I absolutely loved this book. Like I loved it. And it doesn't wrap up exactly the way I would like books to wrap up. But because of the way this series is, it's strange but true history that most of them do not have complete wrapped up endings. They're still like what really happened. But I was so invested in this. And it was creepy at times. But I didn't care. I was so invested. And I have to thank my mom for giving me this book. Because I would have never picked up if she hadn't recommended it. Like it wasn't one that I was drawn to. And I have since bought another book by this author, and my mom has loaned me another book. So I need to read more of her. Again, this is historical, 1907 in Indiana. I'm realizing all these books are historical. Except for Fragments of Fear. Carrie Stuart Parks is not historical romantic suspense. Okay. And since we're going on the historical chain here, Walking on Hidden Wings by Rachel Scott McDaniel. Oh my gosh, I loved this book. This was one of the last books I read for the year, and I did not want to put it down. I absolutely loved it. So we are 1920s. Yes, 1920s, New York State. And it starts out with a marriage of convenience story. But then her husband, I can't think of her name, Geneva. Ooh, I was right. Her husband gets killed, and she goes to find out like what caused his death. Was it just an accident or was it murder? And so she is searching to find answers. Every chapter ends with like a little cliffhanger or a reveal that happens that I just had to keep reading to find out. Now, it is also a dual timeline in a way, because it's only going back a few months prior to kind of what led up to that. And so it does jump between those timelines, but because they're so close together and they're so easy to follow, I had no problems with it. And I cannot wait to read more by her. And this is an author that I just like randomly discovered while talking to my best friend one night, and we were looking at books online, and just it was like, hey, what about this one? And I picked it up because it had been praised by Rachel Fordham, is the whole reason that I was interested in it to begin with. And I am so glad I read it because I absolutely loved this one. And another book that I loved is Secondary Target by Angela Carlisle. This was her debut book. It is a romantic suspense, and now we're in a contemporary setting, not historical. And I was like edge of my seat again. Like I was so invested in what was going on. And then the reveal at the end, it was like, wait, what? No, that can't be. What? Like, yeah. And the relationship between the characters. So the main characters in this one are not involved in law enforcement. One has just come out of the military. I can't remember what branch, but it is now back home as a civilian. And then his sister is a photographer, and Karina, I was close, runs a store. Runs a store? Yeah, runs a store. And so, yeah, like I just loved the way they worked together and listened to what the police told them, and just, I loved it. I cannot wait for book 2. So this is book 1 of a series, and I cannot wait for book 2 because I know it follows one of the characters we met in the story, and I'm really excited for that. So these are the 7 authors that I recommend, that I discovered last year, that I plan on reading more from. Okay, now, what are possibilities for me to read this year? I have quite a few authors that I've never read before, which I was kind of surprised at how many I actually had on my shelf. But I narrowed it down to 5, just because I didn't want to be overwhelming for myself with options. And the way I narrowed it down is which ones are on my 25 and 25 that I need to read. And so that's where I started. And so I have 3 books from that bingo board. And the first one is All We Thought We Knew by Shocklee. I'll put the full cover here. This is my bingo card. And this one, again, is historical. I've read a lot of romantic suspense authors, which is my favorite genre. So I think that's why majority of these, because I'm just getting into historical fiction. Not just, within the last 5 years probably, but yeah. So it is a dual timeline. It goes from 1942 and 1969, and it says, she was so sure she knew her family's story. Now she wonders if she was wrong about it all along. Yeah. So Maddie's twin brother was killed in Vietnam when she lost her best friend and the only person who really understood her. Now news that her mother is dying sends Maddie back home, despite blaming her father for Mark's death. Then we go back in time to 1942, where Ava is picking up the pieces of her life following her husband's death at Pearl Harbor. So we're set like Vietnam, Pearl Harbor times. It's a war. We'll see. Okay, another author that has come highly recommended is Amanda Dykes. So I have Yours is the Night. I don't know a lot about this book, other than it's historical fiction. And I think it's a dual timeline as well, but I'm not 100% sure on that. And it says, a mysterious song in the forest, a discovery in war-torn France, a journey towards hope. So I've heard quite a few people talk about Amanda Dykes, and I was able to find this one, so I picked it up a while ago. When did I buy this one? I think this one's been on my shelf for a while. Oh, okay, not as long as I thought. February of 2024, so just over a year. I thought it'd be there longer than that. So that is another possibility for me. Then the third book on my bingo board is Bridge of Gold by Kimberley Woodhouse. This is a Doors to the Past book that I picked up, I think September. Yes. And so it hasn't been on my shelf that long, not a year. And it just says, repairs on the Golden Gate Bridge uncover a century-old murder. So again, it is another dual timeline, 1933 and present day, set in San Francisco. And I love the Golden Gate Bridge. And so I think this would be really interesting, which is why I picked it up. Other than that, I don't really know a whole lot about it. Then the fourth book that's a possibility is The Story People by Heather Kaufman. This one is one of my 5-star predictions that I need to get around to reading so I can wrap up that video. And this was recommended by Carmen Jane, and she just really hyped it up. And I'm like, oh, that sounds so good. Other than that, I don't know a lot about it. I think it's set overseas, but So Ben inherits his uncle's bookstore. He has a secure career and a built-in home, but he doesn't have contentment. And then author-illustrator Rosemary Berg walks into his store. Ben is captivated, and she is overwhelmed by his disarming charm and familiarity. But can she trust him? The Story People is a celebration of stories and the bond they form when shared and loved. It's about having the courage to live your own story, as well as give your life over to God, the author and perfecter of our faith. So I don't know when this is set. Does it say? Oh, it doesn't. It doesn't have a date at chapter 1, so I don't know. I will find out as I read it. And the last book is The Lawyer and the Laundress by Christine Hill Shontz. I just talked about this in my anticipated releases video, so I will link that video below. I am so excited about this one. I've never read this author before, but I have recently found out that she is Canadian. And I'm like, ooh, so that just makes me that much more interested in it. I don't know why, it just really does. And I was interested in this book just because of the cover. And then I found out it was a marriage and convenience story. And yeah, I had to put it on my list. So it doesn't release until June. However, I do have an advanced reader copy of it. So that is why it is a possibility for April, because I'm just really excited about it and want to get it read. So those are the 5 authors that are possibilities for me to try in April, and the 7 authors that I would recommend to you to try if you have never read any of them before. Do you have a new to you author on your list that you are anxious to read something by? I would love to chat in the comments below. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video today, and I hope you have a great day. Bye.